Hello, everybody. Russ on the West Ham Network. Hope you're safe and well. I've been meaning to say, because Stephen Bowen told me, if you're new, Andy, give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share, give it a subscribe. Thank you very much. He said I didn't say it last time, so I'm saying it this time. Hope you're having a good Saturday. Obviously, we play Steidten in our penultimate pre-season friendly. First team pre-season friendly penultimate. We're obviously playing by Leverkusen next week. And we'll be doing a watch along. Anton will be doing that from about 10 to 5. I think he goes at 5 o'clock in the UK. But the reason why this little video is because of an article that was published. It was published midday, a couple of hours ago. And the reason why it's interesting is it's an article that's written by Jacob Steinberg in The Guardian. And it basically is a damning report, really, on the power struggle between David Moyes and Tim Steidten in terms of transfer policy. It's something we're all aware of, but what's interesting is because it's come from Jacob Steinberg, who we know is a West Ham fan, but also has a very much a good relationship with our owner, David Sullivan. He would have probably had to speak to David or show him what was, or Sully, in terms of what was being said, or even just getting comment to make sure it was factually correct. Otherwise, it could have tarnished his relationship with Mr. Sullivan. So he would have probably had to sign off on some of this, I would suggest. It basically says, well, you know, I'll talk you through it. It says the recruitment of West Ham remains anything but smooth, even with the appointment of Tim Steidten. A scattergun process has slowed things down, and the German's appointment, far from ushering in a new era of collaboration, has confused matters. There is already talk of tension between Steidten and David Moyes, a manager who is also always preferred to maintain control over signings. And in that context, it is not a surprise to hear insiders describing the situation at West Ham. It goes on to say that obviously, you know, it jars. The criticism jars about Moyes because obviously he won their first trophy, but he's faced complaints from the dressing room about his style of football. Jacob Steinberg did do an article, I think, towards the end of the season, talking about that and how some of the players were frustrated by his playing style. As it is, the manager will feel his position has been strengthened by leading West Ham to their first trophy in 43 years, and a safe pair of hands. The Scot has earned European qualification in 3 consecutive years. From Moyes' perspective, now is the time for West Ham to adhere to his wishes. He has rejected many of Steinberg's suggestions and wants players from the Premier League experience. Now, it goes on to say that there's a reluctance, basically, from Moyes to repeat last year's strategy of signing foreign-based players who need time to adjust to English football. The reason for this is because he's on 1-year deal, isn't he? That's basically it. There's no point him buying in players who are going to be good for 3, 4, 5 years down the line, because in theory he's gone in 11 months' time, really. So you know, all of this, I'm not pinning any of this on Moyes at all. I'll be honest, because he's got a clear strategy he wants to do. Tim Steiden's got a clear strategy he wants to do. And the trouble is, they're poles apart. It's not, I just don't think this one's Moyes' fault, I'll be honest. He goes, yeah, Moyes wants solidarity, and West Ham, who wants to replace he who should be named, with 2 midfielders, have made offers for James Ward-Prowse, Conor Gallagher, and Scott McTominay as an indication who he's picking the targets. He wants a British core within the side. West Ham have lost the leadership of Rice and Noble, I can't say his name, in the last 12 months, and other influential voices could be leaving as well, with Mikel Antonio wanted by El Fatigat, and veteran left back Aaron Cresswell likely to leave Wolves. You know, we've just said, we've said before that both those deals are off the table at the moment. So the trouble, and the problem is Steidten can be forgiven for wondering why he was hired. One of his picks is Monaco's Youssouf Fofana, 24-year-old French international, but Moyes is unsure. Fofana is likely to move elsewhere, and Steidten is said to be frustrated. Some wonder whether he will last. Others suggest that Moyes, who has lost Mark Warburton and Paul Nevin from the backroom staff this summer, will go if West Ham start badly. These are uncertain times. And then he goes and talks about Rob Newman. In himself, Rob Newman was head of recruitment. He wasn't technical director. He was head of recruitment, which, is almost, a sideways. If they're looking at an org chart in HR terms, that's sideways or just below from David Moyes, where Tim Steinder's here. Again, we haven't really heard anything about Rob Newman's position in terms of whether he was offered a severance package. If he's out, we don't know. We haven't heard about that. But it says that West Ham were unhappy with their transfer business under Moyes and Newman, whose position is also under threat, while considering that Noble needs more support in his role as a sporting director. Yet the complication caused by hiring Tim Steinberg when the transfer window was open is best encapsulated by West Ham losing out to Newcastle in the race to sign Harvey Barnes from Leicester. West Ham had been working on a deal since April, but a reset after Steidten joined meant the opportunity to purchase a winger who would have been an upgrade on Moyes' choice on the left flank disappeared. So much for getting business done quickly. West Ham did well to get 105 over the line for who should have been named, but losing their captain and best player is a blow, and so far the response has been too reactive. Lodging bids for a variety of players all at once is not indicative of a clear strategy. Now, we know this. We can see there's a divide in, we know about this transfer committee. We know there's a 4-man committee by all accounts. It does seem that, as again, that, Moyes and Steidten have different poles apart in terms of what they want to achieve. Moyes is for the now. He wants to potentially see out his contract with a good season, good for his CV, good for his resume, or even potentially, if it's a very good season, he may well even get an extension. But the trouble is, Steidten is not looking at Moyes' job; he's looking at the team developing, and so that's why he's looking at players like Fofana who can improve over time. A lot cheaper than maybe bringing in someone like Scott McTominay, who's he's at 45 million quid. Fofana maybe 25, 30 million quid, maybe 35 tops. So there's this parallels apart, and obviously Noble, because he's more about the future, the pathway, the kids. He's siding with Steindem, basically. It does go and say that all of course, much can change before West Ham visit Bournemouth in the season opening in 2 weeks' time. They're haggling with Southampton over Ward Prowse, who set piece prowess would be invaluable to Moyes' side and could send Downs to St Mary's. There is room for negotiation with Chelsea over Gallagher, and £45 million could be enough to convince Man United to sell McTominay. Moyes is going to a season with Connor Coventry, Flynn Downs, Thomas Souček, and Lucas Paqueta to do some midfield. So there's no mention about Fornals in there, Jacob, at all. He talks about Moyes does not need to be imaginative. He needs wins. He'll look through West Ham squad and see weaknesses. He doesn't want, at the moment, he knows that a poor run in the beginning of the season probably sees his job. So he wants to have a good side. He wants a good side now. And, he wants a centre back to cover for Kurt Zuma, for the injury-prone Kurt Zuma. And obviously, we had the £20 million deal for Harry Maguire turned down. Paid Man United were like £50 million. They could do one for that. Obviously, we do have Carlos Borges, whatever you call him, from Man City, imminent apparently, but he hasn't played first team football, and that's not enough. We know that's not enough. By all accounts, that deal was done it started. Rob Newman started the ball rolling because obviously he was previously at Man City, and apparently that deal was or the majority of it was concluded while Moyes was in Australia, by what we've heard. The article basically finishes, says there's still too much differing about. The co-owner, David Sullivan, is in charge of negotiations and is not known for getting deals done quickly. Moyes, notoriously picky over signings, is not on the same page as Tim Steinberg. Put it all together, and it hardly seems that West Ham have hit upon a winning formula. Once again, they risk not being ready for the start of the season, and this time they cannot count on he who should not be named to paper over the cracks. So a real sort of damning article from Jacob Steinberg, who would have had to get not permission, but would have probably asked his inside source, Mr. Sullivan, about this power struggle. But we could all see it, plain as day. when you bring in someone, and I don't believe the narrative that Steindem was brought in by the next owners at all. I don't. That doesn't tally with me at all. I mean, we've been led to believe that it was actually Noble who recommended Steindem when Sullivan was looking at bringing in director of football, and obviously we were linked with Paul Mitchell and Tiago Pinta and various others, and Mark gave him Tim Steiner's name as a potential. So, well, again, that's what we've heard. But it comes to this one. This one comes to the top. We've bringing in a director of football is fantastic, but they have to share the same philosophy as the manager. Otherwise, this happens. And we may stumble through. We may stumble through this season. Okay, we may not. But when you look at it, as I said, Moyes has got less than a year left of his contract. Tim Steiden's just signed, so he'll have a multi-year contract behind him. So who's in the more precarious position? Moyes is a man of principles as well. Moyes will stick to his guns, and in the same way, I'm not putting this whole differing entirely on him, because he's always been like that in terms of signings. That hasn't changed. And actually, if anything, he's more steadfast in terms of who he wants. He wants Premier League ready players. We did the big sort of foreign-based influx, and it took a while for these players to adjust. Yes, they did adjust eventually, and we had we've got a hell of a squad, I think, coming in. Maybe 3 or 4 people probably short, I'd suggest, in terms of a complete squad. But there's still that big former captain's shaped hole which hasn't been replaced. It's more than likely to be JWP coming in immediately after Borges, maybe Harbour Bellis as a centre half as well, and then maybe one more. Maybe it is Ellison Alves, maybe it is McTominay, and then I think we're probably done. But let me know what you think. I think it's really interesting the fact that the articles come from Jacob for this. It's in print now about this power struggle. So it'd be interesting to see what happens as a result of this, if anything happens at all. It may force either person's hand to just get some deals over the line. I don't know. Let me know what you think. If you're new around here, give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share, give it one of those bloody good subscribes to cheer me up. And Anton will be doing the watch long in a couple of hours' time, so keep an eye out for that as we take on Stade Rennes. Naya Vergeer's former side, and the current side of Adrien Truffet, who obviously will be linked to. Take care, stay safe, stay warm, keep humble, and come on, you bloody irons. See ya.